Mr. Smelly, who do you think you are? I've always said that these influencer fragrances are rubbish. So you put these out on the market, and again, who do you think you are proving me wrong? Because these are really amazing. They are really good. But again, I've always said that these influencer fragrances are rubbish because most of the times they always remind you of their favorite fragrances. So I've tried several, and there has been the Jean Paul Gaultier Mal line, there's been Aventus, some Valentinos, pretty boring, and most of the times they are manufactured by dupe houses. But I also get a feeling that these fragrances from Naughton Wilson are also inspired by Mr. Smelly's favorite category of fragrances. Kind of a little bit like classic fragrances, but really well done. A thing that I think is important to mention here is that the perfumer is John Stephen, a perfumer that has been working for Bois de Sia as well. But we're gonna start off by looking a little bit closer to the presentation. Firstly, you have a little bit of a sleeve, and then you have a little bit of a magnetic opening. And there you have your beautiful bottle. The bottle feels heavy and well put together. The cap feels heavy, and the atomizer is amazing. But now I think it's high time to dive into these great fragrances. And we're gonna start with Gravitas Pour Homme. Gravitas Pour Homme is a classic barbershop with a modern twist. And the modern twist is that sweet, warm, seductive, round cardamom with vanilla. The fragrance opens up with a dense, rich, super realistic, natural lavender. And then it dries down, you have a kind of a fresh spiciness. The pepper gives it an edge, a dryness from the coriander, but the cardamom is what makes this fragrance. Because that cardamom comes off very sharp, very pointy, well, very fresh in the opening, but then it's transformed into this warm, sweet, round, seductive cardamom with a lot of help of the vanilla, obviously. But it never loses its feeling of a barbershop fragrance. It never loses its feeling of a clean, well put together gentleman. Because in the dry down of this fragrance, you have that earthiness, the mossiness, and the woodiness. I must say, out of these four fragrances, this is my favorite. The projection of this fragrance isn't the strongest, but you do get a nice scent bubble around you, and anyone that comes within your comfort zone will detect your fragrance. The longevity is around 6 to 7 hours, which I think is pretty good for this kind of fragrance. If there's something else I can say about fragrances that can remind you of this, it would be Tom Ford Bout de Jour in the opening, Chanel Platinum Egoist in the dry down, but most of all, the cardamom and vanilla is amazing and what makes this fragrance to what it is. Next out we have Gravitas Essentia. This is a fresher take on Gravitas Pour Homme because the lavender is still the same in the opening, but it gets a lift from the minty notes. It feels a little bit more lighter. Then the heart of the fragrance turns into a greener, more aromatic kind of a fragrance, and I also feel a little bit of a licorice vibe in the background. The cardamom still amazing, still that pointy, fresh, sharp cardamom in the start of it, but then it transforms into this warm, seductive, sweet cardamom with a lot of help of the vanilla that I feel is a little bit more prominent in this fragrance compared to Gravitas Pour Homme. Then the dry down comes, it feels similar, but again, maybe a tad bit sweeter thanks to the more pungent vanilla, but still that earthy, mossy, woody, well put together gentleman. I feel the projection of this fragrance maybe isn't stronger, but it does project for a longer time. So I would say that this one projects for up around 3 to 4 hours. Gravitas Pour Homme projects for around 2 to 3 hours. The longevity still around the 6-7 hour mark, which I think is pretty good for the kind of fragrances we are talking about. Next out we have Old Money. And Old Money, I think, isn't inspired by a person with old money. I think it is inspired by the surroundings a person with old money hangs out in. So I'm not going to talk about all the notes in this fragrance because that doesn't describe the fragrance for you in that particular way, I think. So I'm going to try and paint a picture for you here. So imagine this setting. You're sitting in that sofa with a bourbon in your hand and with a cigar in the other hand. And you are watching a lady in a red dress sipping on a cocktail with a sherry on top. That is how I would describe this fragrance. So again, what I can say about the fragrance is that it feels like a classic woody, musky, amber fragrance with the modern twist of that cherry on top. And that cherry on top, I feel, transforms a little bit into an almond nuttiness in the heart of the fragrance. And another thing that really is important for me to mention is the suede note or the leathery note, because I feel that this is a very pungent leather in here. That may be off-putting for some, but again, I think that classic leatheriness with the modern twist of the cherry feels right on time. Projection of this fragrance is pretty strong and the longevity is around 8 to 10 hours on my skin. Next out we have Chypre fulminare, a fragrance I was afraid of because it has a note in the dry down called cartesium that I many times feels is too animalistic, that it's too sharp for my liking. But I think they balanced it really well in this fragrance. It is a classic chypre fragrance, but with a modern twist of it being lighter and brighter in the top. There's also a tad bit sourness in here, so I had to look it up. Where does this sourness come from? And that is from the ylang ylang flower. And when it starts to settle down, there comes forward a smoky leatheriness, but without losing that freshness from the opening, the brightness from the opening, and at the same time the base note starts coming forward and gives this a green touch as well. And when it starts to dry down, the leatheriness gets another push from the cartesium, obviously, but again it's combined with that oak musk greenness, that vetiver sharpness, so it's kind of a dirty fragrance meeting a fresh fragrance. And I like that. I like the contrast in the fragrances because then it's happening something. There's something going on here. Longevity of this fragrance is on my skin really good. Again, around 10 hours with a pretty strong projection as well. So I will try and rank these fragrances really quick for you. On place number 4 we have Old Money. This is on the 4th place because it's really musky and ambery together with the leatheriness, so it can get you a little bit old feeling, obviously. On spot number 3 we have Chypre fulminare. I usually don't like chypre fragrances, but this one really hits it for me. On 2nd place we have gravitas essentia. I'm a sucker for barbershop fragrances, and here I feel that the vanilla is a little bit more forward, and that is what makes this end up on place number 2. Because my favorite is gravitas pour homme. I think this is probably the best barbershop in my collection, and I have Creed Body Portugal that has been my favorite for many years, but since I got this one I haven't been able to stop wearing it. So I want to thank Dan, who is Naughton and Wilson, and I would like to thank Wilson, whoever that is, for creating these fragrances together with the perfumer John Steven, probably one of my favorite perfumers right now. So thank you very much for a well done job.